Okay guys, a very warm welcome to UGA Season 3. We are about to kick off with the UGA Draft League madness once more. And I'm really looking forward to it. Possibly because I haven't drafted what I think is a terrible team. I think I've kind of drafted an alright team. Possibly for the first time ever. So I thought just for the guys over in the Johto Division, I would put some thoughts down on metaphorical paper and just talk through some of the picks we've got. I know that Matrix and the team are putting together like the Uber reflections on everyone's draft picks, and they're probably filming this at the exact same time I am. It is about 1:15 in the morning here in what is now darkest Wales. But I figured, what the hey, let's put some ideas down for starters. And perhaps this is a good opportunity as well for any of the other streamers and content creators in the Johto Division. Here I can clarify for you once and for all, definitively, before we even get into week one, on how you pronounce my team name. This is the Crymych Coalossals. I'll re-stress that. The Crymych Coalossals. Crymych comes up quite frequently. It's not Crymych. It's Crymych. Crymych. So that's one for you all to be practicing on. So the team that we put together for this year's draft was really sort of built around, where is she? That one down there. The lat press, the G-Max lat press. I think that was my very first pick this year. And I was pretty pleased with that. G-Max lat press, it's an absolute monster. You know, we've seen this in previous seasons. Like if you go back to like Series 7, and I think Series 8, I forget when Dynamax was kicked out. But like before the restricteds came into our sort of scope of access for battling with in VGC, Lapras was an absolute beast. It's offering a lot of utility, not just in terms of its offensive presence, but you know, it can do Perish Song nonsense as well. And we've seen Lapras like closing out games just by triggering death for everyone. So it's a nice sort of a end game option, as well as being a really solid opening game option as well. And Lapras can be procced by all sorts of things. So Lapras has a lot of weaknesses, right? That's undeniable. But it's also got lots of ways in which it can protect itself, and in many respects, Lapras getting smacked by something that is super effective isn't necessarily the end of the world. That can actually be a pretty good thing. Both in the sense that quite often people will avoid smacking Lapras because they don't want to proc that thing. But that gives it a chance to set up and do various Lapras things. With the team that we've put together, there's a fairly obvious way in which we can start proccing Lapras. We have Riolu, who again could do all sorts of useful things with priority steal, priority fighting. That's all pretty useful, and it's also got access to coaching. So that means that this Lapras, whilst you would normally expect Lapras to come in on the special side of things, this Lapras can also offer some pretty potent physical oppression. And we've seen that in previous seasons of UGA as well, where Lapras has come in with a physical set and sort of caught people unawares. So even though you've got G-Max Lapras just sort of sat there doing a load of things that you'd expect it to do, and do them very well, there are ways in which it can be mixed around at the same time. Now, in all of VGC, the thing that Lapras wants to see least of all is Rillaboom. And like, I wasn't really going to pick Rillaboom. You know, I wanted my fire, my water, and my grass. I wanted that all on the same table. But honestly, I didn't plan on picking Rillaboom because I didn't expect to be able to pick Rillaboom. I mean, it's Rillaboom. It's one of the most offensive priority Pokemon in the entire game. I mean, stick Choice Band on Grassy Glide, stab, terrain boosted moves. I mean, that's ridiculous. why would you just leave it sitting there? Like, the second I picked Lapras, like the very next pick from whoever it was, and there were like, how many picks were there between my Lapras and whatever came next? It must have been like, I don't know, 20 plus. How nobody touched Rillaboom in all of that time is, that's a mystery. I will never understand that. And really, for me, it was like, if we get to round 3 and Rillaboom has not been picked, we're picking it. We're just going to have him. And, you know, I was saying to Matrix that the cynic in me just wants to bench the gorilla. Just put him on the bench, forget he exists, because really, with Rillaboom out of contention for anybody else, Lapras's life is profoundly easier. There's, of course, a hell of a lot of stuff out there that does threaten Lapras, but Rillaboom was like the #1 assassin who could really just like wipe out any plans that you might have for Lapras. So really pleased with that. But some of the other picks I was pretty pleased with as well. So like Lapras is like primarily my offensive threat. I think a lot of people would be expecting me to like open with Lapras and just sit it there, max it, and just start doing the things you normally expect Lapras to do. However, we've got Dracozolt there as well. We've got Dracozolt and Drifblim. And of course, Lapras has priority ice. So I could be proccing things in the opposite direction. I could be proccing into Dracozolt, you know, max it with Hustle, Weakness Policy, and of course the more traditional Life Orb. Dracozolt sets its own wind, sets its own speed, sorry, through Max Airstream. So that's a pretty potent option as well. And of course we have the Unburden option through Drifblim, which could be triggered by Rillaboom's Terrain, or through a priority proc. You know, we could stick a Weakness Policy on that, trigger it, get the speed boost, get the special attack boost, and max it, and away it goes. So I think there's real utility there between those Pokemon. And I'm really pleased to have those options. Salazzle is in there. You know, I felt I needed a fire type. Poison is useful as well. There will be other grass types out there that can put some offensive pressure on the Lapras. But I think Salazzle just has, again, so much offensive pressure that I'm pretty pleased I was able to pick that. You know, relatively speaking, I think Salazzle is pretty good for a B tier option. So yeah, pleased to have that on board. By that stage of the draft, like after I'd got Lapras, Dracozolt, Rillaboom, Riolu, Salazzle, and Drifblim, like I was like kind of happy. Like at that stage, I had 6 picks in mind that I wanted, and I'd got each and every one of them. It was like, okay, we got that, and we got that, and we got that, and like, no, nobody's pinching things that I really need. I wasn't getting sniped at all, which left me in a really weird situation because I'd planned out the first half of the draft, and then the rest of it was like, well, I'm kind of happy with my 6. I can work with this 6 pretty effectively, and they bring all sorts of offensive pressure. There's a nice bit of support in the form of Riolu. So then it was like a question of like, what gaps can we start filling? So I was really conscious that as a team goes, it's sort of mid-tier in terms of speed. You know, Lapras, it's never going to be the fastest thing, and it's never going to be the slowest thing. There's no real getting around that. Same with Dracozolt, it's kind of a weird mid-tier in terms of speed. We do have the potential for controlling the speed with Drifblim and getting Tailwind going there, so that's a solid option. But we didn't really have much that was going to work that well in a Trick Room setting. Now, of course, Lapras can function there, and with Rillaboom, you've got priority regardless. So I'm not like getting overly preoccupied by Trick Room, but I thought it was important to have some sort of response to it. So Gardevoir is very much there for that purpose, and you know, I'm not really doing that much beyond that. It's just to give me the coverage, give me the options, and make sure there's a response I can bring, and that is in part what Shiinotic is doing there. fans of UGA2 will know that whilst it didn't necessarily bring me many wins, Morlal did bring many an exciting and crowd-pleasing moment in UGA2. We've evolved Morlal into Shinitic, and again, it's a really cheap D-tier Spore setter. It's fully evolved. It can be set up to be reasonably bulky, but pretty slow, and has Spore. In this draft, 10 points for a Spore user that's fully evolved, and that's crazy money. So we have our Trick Room options there. Coughing, pleased to get that, just to have a neutralizing gas option as well. I'm a little bit ability dependent, so obviously I'm going to be pretty cautious about bringing Coughing, but I'm also appreciating that there are going to be teams who are heavily dependent on abilities as well, and it's just a nice option to be able to shut down other people's strategies, or at least have control over when those ability-based strategies are coming into play. So I think Coughing fills a useful role. And then we came down to the last two picks, and at this stage I'm thinking I have no idea what I really want. So I didn't really have that much to control attack. So Torracat seemed, again, a pretty useful option, and having another fire type is, I think, useful. Lapras is threatened, Shinitic is threatened, Rillaboom is threatened. All of these things are threatened by ice. So having another fire option in the mix is a useful bit of utility. But of course, Torracat is bringing most of the things that Incineroar is bringing. But stick an Eviolite on it. It's still bringing Intimidate. So it's sort of it's doing everything that Incineroar does and can do, but just doing it a little bit more cheaply, and possibly with a little bit more longevity about it, with an Eviolite on it as well. So I don't know how much we're going to see Torracat. It sort of depends on who we get paired up with. But again, it was just a nice option to have in the mix. And then Greedent up at the top. I honestly don't know how long Greedent's going to stay in this team. There were a lot of interesting D-tier options left, and there are perhaps some more sensible D-tier options to pick. But in the short term, I thought, Greedent, again, fully evolved option. D-tier, fully evolved. There aren't that many solid options. But I think Greedent does have some interesting utility. It's got amazing coverage in terms of its moves. And, some useful abilities. Anything that sort of restores health whilst you're gobbling down berry boosted things, that's not to be sniffed at. It can get off some pretty offensive things in terms of stockpile stuff. So Greedent, it just provides an option. If I come up against a pretty solid ghost based team, I've got a nice solid normal type that can offer some options. But I think this is probably the most balanced UGA draft team that I've brought. My UGA2 team had lots of useful, quite meta-based pairs, but I wasn't really getting the chance to bring them into play last time. We didn't have much utility, and I think this team does. I think there are lots of different ways that I can bring some of the power players in. And not necessarily easy ways for them to be shut down, which I think was one of the problems with UGA2. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this, and I'm excited to try and make use of it. I think possibly at this stage, one of the problems that this team might have is the attacking options might seem a little bit obvious to pick from. There is a pretty solid core of 6 that are probably more likely to be coming out on a regular basis, but I do think there's just enough utility. We'll see what happens with the free picks. Greedent is vulnerable, but at the same time, I like Coughing, I like Riolu, and I like Torracat. So will I switch out Greedent for another, baby or not fully evolved Pokemon? I don't know. That was another problem that I had in UGA2. I had lots and lots of baby Pokemon, and I did suffer because of that on a couple of occasions. So we'll see. It may stay exactly like this, but we'll have another few looks at that last slot. But yeah, I mean those are my thoughts on my team. I'm happy. I think that's the thing to say. I'm happy with the offensive options. I'm happy at the ways in which I can support it. It's not the fastest and it's not the slowest team, so it does suffer in that respect. But there are ways in which we can respond to both fast teams with some Driftblim Unburdened stuff, and Gardevoir if we need the Trick Room sets. So yeah, no, I'm looking forward to this. So those are my thoughts. I'll leave it there, and probably the next thing that we'll be posting in relation to the UGA stuff will be week 1, game 1, week 1. Yeah, so bring it on, and I look forward to catching you all on the Discord, and we'll see how it goes. All right, guys, I'm gonna go to bed. We'll catch you later. Good night.